Hi, welcome to Preps Plus Podcast Episode 4, brought to you by Sterling Auto Group. I'm Josh Hart, sports editor here at the Daily News. I'm here with Jason Leskiw, our Preps reporter. We want to break down a few things this week with just us, no guests this week. A nice little change. We like to have the high schoolers in and talk about some things, but this gives us a chance to get a little bit more into detail. I'll start with you, Jason, on who's impressed you so far this season? We haven't got a lot of games in with the rain, but who's been impressive so far?
R.A. Long has been a terrific story so far, specifically Caden Vanderwerth. Entering this year, there were some questions about pitching, and Vanderwerth has taken the rein, taken full control of that ship, and been really outstanding so far. On the flip, and their hitting, the other part of that is their hitting has been fantastic, and it makes it really easy, and that's something that Vanderwerf and Coach Mark Heerlings has talked to me a little bit about too, is as a pitcher, having a few extra runs on the board makes it a lot easier to relax and do your thing rather than maybe getting a little mixed up mentally. On the flip side, and they're 4-1, by the way. And they look like real contenders to this point. The other side to that is Toledo, state champions from last year. They're now 2-6, and the way they've been playing, it's looking more likely that Dakota Robbins, who had 3 innings of no-hit ball 2 weeks ago, excuse me, gals. And was pulled because he wasn't stretched out all the way. He wasn't, in mid-season form. And that had been Toledo's staple, is to pitch a guy 3 innings, pitch another guy 3 innings, and then maybe if they have it won by mercy rule, have their closer come in. Now it looks like Robbins might be the guy to kind of break that mold for Toledo, and he might be the key to their success moving forward. Because having a state champion come back and start the season 2-6, whether the weather's been a factor or not, that's troubling for any team and any coach.
It is interesting to see both teams kind of on different paths. Of course, Toledo plays in a very difficult league, but I think they have the talent. Dalton Yoder is out. Is there any timetable on his possible return?
He should be returning soon enough. It might take until May. I was told by Coach Jeff Davis that he will miss half the season. And as far as a specific timetable, as with any injury, you got to kind of play it by ear and let things heal the way that they're supposed to. But Yoder should be back relatively soon.
It is heartbreaking for Dalton. He's obviously been an athlete of the year for us. Last year's TDN Athlete of the Year. He was a minute or two away from a state wrestling title, his first, and he heard that knee pop and wasn't able to continue, even though he did try to do so. He missed half of last baseball season as well. And when he came back, he added some much-needed pop on a run to Toledo State Championship. Another guy dealing with injuries we spoke to last week, Andrew Walling. It seems like his back is fully healthy, and that's going to be a big boost for R.A. Long. I know they weren't super excited about falling out of those district playoffs last year, but right now it looks like they're the favorites in the GSHL 2A. There's obviously still a lot of GSHL play to go, but they are looking good. They have a big matchup with Washougal coming up that I'm interested to see. But they look talented, they look deep, and there's no better place to watch a baseball game than the Lumberyard.
Yeah, well, and again, we're really only 25% of the way through the season, even though we're at the midpoint on the calendar. So there's a lot of makeup games to go, and having, that's the thing, is when there's those double headers, that I think will be the test for R.A. Long and really any school. When you have those double headers, that'll test your depth. How long can a pitcher go for? How many, and then also it's going to test strategy. Is a coach going to just have a guy throw 3 innings, have another guy throw 3 innings, or under 30 pitches this year, right? And so, that's going to be the test.
A lot of coaches say there's going to be four games a week a lot through this season. I mean, we're a month in. Clatskanie baseball has played one game in the state of Oregon. They got a couple in Arizona, but I mean, we are more than 30 days into the season, and we're looking at teams that have barely got on the diamond at all. So there's going to be a tough stretch coming in, but I don't know when that's even going to start. Today we had another slew of rainouts.
Wind outs,
yeah. And I don't know when this is gonna start getting going. I've never seen a prep season with so many cancellations. Not only in the spring, but there was snow in the winter and mudslides and landslides, and it seems like Northwest Washington weather or Northwest weather is just not wanting the prep season in the 2016-17 prep season to happen this year. And I'd like to see some games getting played. I haven't been out to a game this year, and every time I schedule myself out for a game, it gets rained out and I'm stuck in the office. So I'm getting a little cabin fever, wanting to get out and watch some baseball and softball. Outside of baseball, is there softball or soccer teams that are looking good so far?
Yeah. And Toledo Winlock United looks like the king of soccer in the area right now. The Kings, I should say. They're really, they're a team that should go really far, and they're my favorite to win the state championship in the 2B. Then again, we always see every year there's a really good team knocked off at some point. And so, like we were just talking about, there's a lot of soccer to be played also, even though those games haven't been canceled. There's still a lot of season left. So, it'll be interesting to see. But to this point, United is the team to beat.
It is nice to see some games being played. Soccer obviously not going to cancel because of the weather. Those fields might be a little bit sloppy. But you look at a team like United, very interesting that they're able to have the success they're having right now without Adair Garibay back. This guy was a phenomenal scorer for them the last few years and graduated, and they got a little bit of taste of the state playoffs last year, falling in the first round, and I think that might help them going forward. They have a lot of youngsters, Isaac Garibay, Andreas Malionat, the Van Vlex, Gustavo Barragon. They have a lot of talent. They like to play possession. Lewis County not known for its soccer, but I think they're helping change that. They got to experience what the next level is like last year. I think that helps motivate them going forward. I really like their chances this year. They haven't allowed a goal in Trico play yet, and they've beaten some top of the class teams in the center white salmon teams they've notoriously struggled with. So Horst Malionat has done an excellent job with that program, and even starting up the Centralia College program as well. He's a heck of a coach, a good guy to have in the area of soccer. What about softball teams? Any teams that are looking real good?
Toutle Lake, as far as Washington softball goes, now, this is still sticking with the 2B, and I know that doesn't excite everybody, but Toutle Lake is a very good team. They're polished. They've overcome losing one of the area's best hitters, if not the area's best hitter, someone who hit 20 home runs last season. And, they've got a really well-rounded roster, and it's taken them a long way. On the Oregon side, Rainier is 5-0. Will they lose this season? That's kind of a question that I'm asking myself, and I don't think it's, even though it's early, I don't think it's too soon to say, they might have a perfect season. I think it's very possible.
They do have some tough games on the schedule. They play the Sios and the Daytons of the world to help their non-league schedule teams that consistently they play in the state tournament. Obviously, Dayton's one they play twice a year now because they've met them so frequently in the state tournament. They schedule 2 non-league games against them. Those teams have met in the state championship each of the last 4 years. Those are kind of the class of Oregon. both Rainier and Toutle Lake though are always going to be impressive. Kelso softball, I like what I'm seeing from Kelso softball this year. They have a trio of pitchers right now that I'm not sure how Dean Sorensen gets them all time. I mean, Megan Holt, Jordan Reagan, and freshman Capri Franson, all talented arms, and to have that kind of depth in the circle, that's going to be an asset for the Lassies going forward.
Yeah, to have a freshman pitcher that's that productive for you in Franzen, that's a big deal. And like you said, the depth, having that depth, especially when the weather lets up. Right. You know, I think that might be the ticket for Kelso. And at 5-1, I'm still wondering how good are they? Are they as good as a 5-1 team looks on paper? You know, was there some instances where they got the right hit at the right time, but something that might not continue throughout the length of the season? We're going to find that out, and my money is on them being as good as they look on paper. But you never know until you know.
Right. And they had that thrilling win against R.A. Long last week, and R.A. Long's another one of those teams that's probably going to be another state contender once again. A lot of good softball in the area this year, I think. You see the Rainiers, talking about their non-league schedule. You see these teams knowing their talent and scheduling like-minded games. Just looking at Castle Rock softball, I'm really impressed with the games they've been able to schedule in the non-league season. They've gotten WF West, Rainier, and Montesano in so far. Really, really talented teams for non-league play. They've come out of those games 0-3. I think that will help going forward. This is a team that made the state semifinals last year, and I think they knew their talent coming in, and they wanted to improve. They still have R.A. Long and Hoquiam coming up, and I really like when teams challenge themselves in non-league play, and that way when they get to Trico play, Castle Rock should be very strong. The center's gonna be a challenge, I think, but I like what Ron Strode's squad is doing out there in Castle Rock, scheduling these type of games. As far as Central 2B League baseball, we talked about a little bit with the Toledos of the world. How strong is that conference or that league?
Very. I mean, you look at the records from that area. Central 2B got Kalama 3-1. Wakai comes 4-4. Toutle Lake is 3-3. And I know those records don't sound exciting, but these are clearly not losing teams. Winlock's 3-3. Ilwaco's 4-1. I mean, you got a lot of freaking talent in that league, and just in school, that smaller school deal. It doesn't mean that you can't field a good team, especially if you have kids who are motivated and just want to win.
You saw that league produce 3 of the 4 state semifinalists last year, 3 of the 4 Final Four. And you look at it this year and you go, PWV's, struggling a little bit in terms of where they've been at in past years. Toledo's 2-6, the defending champions, and you realize just how strong that league is. Napavine last year dropped out in the district playoffs, but they are the top of the league this year. Every coach has said they're the favorite. Wyatt Stanley's the best pitcher they'll face all year, and that's just the improvement. Napavine, you got Adna, you have the additions of Rainier, Washington, the Mountaineers, who have been real strong this season, as well as the addition of Kalama. And you look at this league and you just think last year was so good, and you add both Rainier and Kalama, and you say, how does it get stronger? And then you add Winlock's improvements, and you add Wakayakum getting a year older and improving. Toutle Lake's always going to be a strong team. I mean, this conference is 7-8 teams deep, and you're going to look at teams that aren't going to be able to get into the state playoffs who in maybe another league would be deserving. Right. So I think the district tournament may be the de facto state tournament for that 2B league.
Yeah, and going back to Toledo for one quick second, that 2-6 record for coming off a state championship is disappointing. but don't discount that too. I mean, they're still a really good team, and you just watch them play even in a loss, and you see how good they are. And it's not how good they can be; they are really good. But their record just isn't indicative of a good team at this point.
I'll put you on the spot here, Jason. Who's your pick? A lot of coaches are saying Napavine. I would go with Kalama. I know they took Napavine to 8 innings.
Who paid you to say that?
They took Napavine to 8 innings. Cameron Walker is a stud on the mound, and they have so much talent. Hayden Wilson behind the plate. They just have a lot of talent, a lot more leadership this year. They tend to. I think they keep themselves composed. Brandon Walker is a heck of a coach. So my pick is for Kalama to somehow get on top of Napavine and end up winning that league. Who's your pick, Jason?
You did put me on the spot here.
A lot of good teams to choose from.
I'm going to say that Toledo rebounds.
Toledo rebounds?
I'm going to say that Napavine, as good as they are, and they are good, that they're overachieving at this point, and Toledo is underachieving, and they will work out what they need to work out.
Jason would like to see the Toledo-Napavine football rivalry come back to baseball season. Obviously, two schools that know each other quite well. The other thing I want to end on is our Preps Plus this week was on the OSAA reclassification. They're looking at going down to a 5 classification model. They went up to 6 from 4 back in 2006, so they're trying to add something new altogether. Washington obviously uses a 6 classification model, but the impact this would have on Rainier and Clatskanie is just monumental. Right now, under the current proposal, now this is draft number 13 of who knows how many, they have to decide in the fall. But Clatskanie right now would become the largest 2A school, and that would help them a lot. Ryan Tompkins says that not only in football they would have, instead of a 3 or 4 team league like they have been the past few years, they would be having a 5 team league or 6 team league when they can actually compete against schools their own size. They only have 28 kids out for football, and to compete against teams like Rainier this season, who had such a plethora of talent as well as numbers out, that's hard for Clatskanie to do. So it's I think it helps them in a lot of ways. However, on the flip side, you have Rainier, who has been very strong the past few years, the past decade really, in a lot of sports. They're consistently competing for league titles. That would change under the new system. They would be paired with Astoria, Tillamook, teams that are almost 3 times their size. And for them to take the same numbers, even their football team, who had an excellent season this year, would be facing just teams that are getting 70 kids out for football. And that's going to be very tough for them to do. So I hope it doesn't happen. I would like to see our local teams be able to compete against schools their own size. There's not a whole lot Oregon can do if it does want to drop down to that 5 classification to prevent things like this, because you're just dealing with a wider range in each classification. Doug Knox has said to look at those cutoff numbers and see really what can we do to make sure things are balanced out. You don't want to see leagues in an imbalance. But it's going to be interesting to see how this develops over the fall.
And Doug Knox also, if I remember correctly, felt like, it's that the way that any kind of reclassification goes really depends on what the big city schools, the Portland area schools want to do.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's all driven by 6A. Ryan Tompkins said 6A is watered down, which is maybe true. He pointed to a lot of upsets, and especially the baseball season, when you're getting teams that are below 500 into the state playoffs, and then they have one good pitcher and they upset a top-ranked team, and that shouldn't happen. And so I get the reasoning behind it, but you can't forget about your small schools. I know that things are driven by the higher levels, just like in WIA, they're driven by 3A and 4A. But you can't forget about the small schools. It's just like the RPI. It was all dependent. It was all dependent on the 3A and 4A teams that wasn't working. It wasn't the system wasn't working for them. And yet the 2A, the 1A, Yakima was doing well, Spokane was doing well, and and they point to the 3A and 4A schools not producing ticket sales in Tacoma. I mean, you can't forget about your small schools. You have four classifications of small schools and 2 classifications of big ones.
Right. Ticket sales, folks. That's what it's all about in high school sports.
I mean, to pay the rent of the Tacoma Dome, it just might be.
Yeah, well, that's a fair point too. Yeah.
That's it for our Preps Plus podcast, episode 4. Again, I want to thank Sterling Auto Group for sponsoring us. Much thanks to them for helping put this on. So that's it for us, and we'll see you throughout the spring.
See you guys.